Welcome, explorers. My name is Jasmine, and I'm from the Balboa Park Cultural Partnership. We are just so excited to have you guys here today for our very first Explorer experience, if you did not know that. And we will be joined today with the Fleet Science Center. And this is a live experience that's exclusively for you guys, our annual pass holders, and it will be recorded so that you're able to check it out later. But before I introduce our other two speakers, please go ahead and close out your browsers or any open windows you may have so we can have the best streaming experience possible. You guys good? Closing out those browsers, closing out those windows? And I think we'll also just give a little bit more time just for other people to just stroll on in too. So thank you for everyone who's been here and is prompt. Okay, awesome. So today we have the education manager of school programs, Julia Medea. Hey, Julia.
Hi.
And we also have exhibits experience lead, Jackie Valentine.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Jackie.
Take it away, Julie.
All right. So hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here today. We are super excited to be able to meet with all of you and do this really unique experience in these kind of crazy times. So at the Fleet, we are, still hoping to be able to bring everyone science and to make sure that everybody is still staying curious. Hopefully you are all staying healthy, safe, and engaged while you're at home. And so today we were hoping to be able to bring you this really cool, but also kind of hot, as you'll see in a few seconds, experiment that Jackie is going to be showing you from his kitchen. So I will go ahead and toss it over to him. And we'll see what experiment he's got for us today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to my kitchen. My name is Jackie Valentine, and I'm an exhibits experience lead at the Fleet Science Center. Now, I have a demonstration for you today that uses things that I've actually just found around my kitchen. Because at the Fleet, we have this philosophy that science is everywhere. So you may think that maybe being stuck at home, there's not really any science to experience. You can't come out to the Science Center and see all the cool things that we have there. But really, it's all around you. There's all kinds of stuff that science is a part of. So we're going to kind of see that today. Now, of course, since this is an example and a demonstration, it's not necessarily something that you should try at home because it does use fire. We have a candle here that will be the source of the fire, and we're actually going to use an orange, and you'll find out in a second why. You may think, oh, an orange, that's not very dangerous, that's totally fine. But of course, you're going to see something that maybe you didn't know about in a few moments. Of course, please don't try this at home. I have my setup here at the stove. The stove is made to have fire added. It doesn't have any sort of fabrics or anything that can catch fire or get singed or anything like that. You don't want to accidentally burn the carpet or the couch. And I'm a trained professional, so that's my job. All right. Now, before we get into it, we're going to kind of wonder, what do you think is going to happen? How is the candle and the orange going to come into play with each other? What's the result going to be? You kind of want to think about that first, and then as we get closer and closer to the actual testing time, you may change your guesses. We call those a hypothesis. When you make a hypothesis, that's just basically a guess as to what's going to happen next, and then you do a test to find out if you were right or wrong. And if you're wrong, then you do a new hypothesis, you do another test until you have the right answer. And then you find out what the truth of your experiment really was. All right, so let's find out what happens. First, we have to peel the orange.
Now, while I'm peeling this orange, we're going to look at the actual peel itself. You'll see there's a bunch of these little bumps, and those are actually a little bit of a hint as to how the experiment is going to work and what we'll see next. All right, looks like the orange is all finished. Let's try this out. All right, now that our orange is peeled, we can light our candle next. Now this is where the magic happens. what we're going to do is we're going to take one of these orange peels, and I'm just going to actually squeeze it like this, and we'll see what happens. Let me turn this light up here off.
Pretty cool, right? Now, the question is, what just happened? Why did the flame kind of spark and get bigger when I squeezed the orange peel? Do you guys have any guesses? Do you guys think you know maybe how it works, or do you have questions? Do you have these burning questions that you want to find out why does that happen? What's the secret? What's the magic behind this science? We'll actually be able to answer your questions coming right up next. Yeah, Alex, Alex is actually a volunteer, so not actually on payroll at all. He kind of volunteered for that and gave his life for science. All right, so now does anybody have any guesses as to why that happened with the orange? What exactly do you think made the fire kind of spark like that? And the idea is you can put them in the questions. You can pose your results. Orange oil. Okay, so now what specifically in orange oil is the chemical that is reacting? Because it's not the entirety of the orange oil. It's one specific chemical. Anybody know what it is? It sounds like another citrus fruit. So it doesn't sound like orange. It sounds like something else. Anybody know? Any guesses? What are some other citrus fruits out there? It's not quite the acid. Okay, you got lemons, limonene. I don't know if that was a typo or not, but limonene with an extra N in there. That is the right answer. So limonene is the chemical in the orange oil that is reacting with a fire. So awesome job, explorers. Yes, that is the right answer. The limonene in there is actually a chemical that is used by oranges to do something. Anybody know what that chemical be used for? Hi, Eric. We're learning about oranges. We're learning about a chemical that's in oranges called limonene that is used we used it for an experiment to cause some fire to kind of spark and get a little bit bigger. All right, yes, Cynthia Chapman. Yes, you have the right answer. It is to repel bugs. When bugs land on the oranges, they are going to try to eat the orange. The orange doesn't want that to happen. So yes, the limonene is there to kind of get these bugs to go away. They don't like it. It's kind of messes their systems up, so they want to get away from it. But what's funny is that it also is what we can kind of sense as the smell of oranges. So that orange smell, when you pick up an orange and smell it, that's the limonene that you're smelling, or at least part of what that orange smell is. Now, there's also something else that limonene can do that you actually can try at home with a balloon. So if you have a balloon that's inflated and you do the same thing, you peel the orange and you kind of crack the peel near the balloon, something might happen. Does anybody have any ideas what would happen to a balloon if you got limonene on it? Any guesses? Expand, it pops. Yes, Cynthia Chapman, you got it. It does pop. So that chemical in their limonene will break down that rubber or whatever that material on the outside of the balloon is. It will break it down. It'll cause it to be weak at that point. And since the tension around that balloon is caused by the air inside, that weak point is going to be where it tears and it'll actually pop the balloon. What's interesting is limonene can actually be used in a lot of different kind of industries and things like that. And if you've ever been to like a theme park or like a haunted house where they have this really realistic spider webs everywhere, that's actually where they take limonene and they mix it with styrofoam, and that'll kind of turn the styrofoam into kind of liquid, and they'll spray it with compressed air and it'll fly all over everything and cause these stringy webs all over the place. Kind of a cool little special effect that you use limonene to. Yeah, so does the chemical come in other fruits? Yeah, so just about every citrus fruits. You got limes, you got oranges, you got lemons. I don't know if you could tell. There was a couple times where in those demos in the video, I actually ran out of orange peels. So I had some cuties and a little clementine, those really easy peel kind of things. I used those instead. It was a little bit more difficult because they're smaller. They have little, their pockets, they're smaller, those little bumps. But it still worked. Let's see, the chemical come in other fruits. Is limonene
Our next
flammable?
question is limonene flammable? Yeah.
Yeah, so limonene is technically it's flammable. When you have something that's flammable, like even gasoline or any other chemical like that, there has to be a proper mix of oxygen and the flammable chemical and things like that, which is called stoichiometry. That is trying to figure out what the exact right mixture of oxygen and your chemical and your like ignition source and all those different things. Because if they're not at the right kind of concentration of different things, then they won't ignite. So like if you had limonene on your hands or things like that, or when I was doing the example, I was getting a lot of orange oil and a lot of limonene on my hands. But that doesn't necessarily mean that if I got too close, my hands would catch fire. So it's kind of like you kind of have to get that really, really fine mist into that candle. And also remember, I'm saying like you, but I don't mean try it at home. You don't want to accidentally end up lighting something on fire. That's why I was doing it in a nice, safe, controlled environment.
So the next question, Jackie, is it only the peel or the juice as well?
I don't believe that it's in the juice. I think it's just that outside layer to protect the inside of the orange. I'm pretty sure that limonene is really bitter. So I don't believe that that in the orange there is any of that bitter taste. I think it's all just sweet, sugary, awesome inside orangey goodness. Oh, that's a good.
And then how much limonene is in an orange? Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, limonene in an orange. I am actually not sure. That is a good question. We also have a hashtag that you can use to ask kind of more expanded questions for anything that I don't know. Because I don't know everything in the entire world. I only know a limited amount of stuff. But you can use the hashtag #AskAFleetster, and we have a whole kind of panel, a whole kind of community of scientists and people that all together can answer just about any question that you might have out there. So it's hashtag #AskAFleetster. Fleetster is FLEETSTER. So you can use that on any social media platform, and they'll get your question. They'll try to find somebody that can answer it, and they'll get that answer back to you. Yes, lemons do have limonene. Same thing, same reason. They want to keep their fruit safe. They don't want to let bugs land on there and burrow in and take all of their insides out, because fruits, if you've ever noticed that fruits have seeds on the inside, unless you get like a navel orange or something that is bred to have no seeds in it. But the inside of that fruit, the fruit is usually the pod that is made to grow a new plant. So if that fruit dies, that plant can't become a new tree or things like that. So it's really important to plants to keep themselves safe. It would make sense that you could use limonene as a pesticide, but I am not sure if that has been something that's been used in the past. It makes sense to me that it would be used, but I can't say for sure. Yes, limes do have limonene, just the same thing as lemons and oranges and clementines and all those different kind of things.
So just to continue with the what Jackie was mentioning in terms of your questions, as you guys submit them, and just in case we can't answer them, this whole series that we're calling Flea TV is a digital way, again, a virtual way that we're trying to connect with everybody, keep everyone connected to that power of science, right? While we are all at home and trying to still figure out some fun things that we can share with you guys. So please do keep an eye out for that as well on all the social media platforms, on our YouTube channel. So Jack, our next question, what other experiments can be done with oranges or citrus fruit?
Yeah, no.
So
do you have an answer, or do you want me to answer?
Yeah, so actually I've got one that's pretty interesting that people can try at home. So we were talking about oranges, right, and orange peel. So I've got a cutie right here with its peel still on, right? And then if you put it into a glass of water, like this one, this might spill. Yep, you'll spill some water like I just did, and then it will actually float, right? And that's actually going to be a little bit heavier than a peeled orange or a peeled cutie like this one. But when you put that one into a glass of water, it will actually sink, as you can see to the bottom of my glass. So that's a pretty interesting experiment and causes some questions as well. But the big one is the peel actually adds weight to the orange. So why does the orange with the peel still on it actually float, while the one after you take it off, even though it weighs less, is the one to sink? So we can go ahead and kind of use that one for a couple discussions. And if you have any questions about that one. All right, so the peel has air in it and the orange doesn't. It has less density. There's air under the peel and there's air inside, or some of the questions or the answers I'm seeing coming through. Because it encloses air, which is lighter than water. Great. And does the oil have an effect on water tension? So is one of the next questions coming through. So you guys got it right on the head, right? So without the orange peel on there, the more dense the orange actually becomes. And so it will start to sink like you saw in my glass. Jackie pointed out in his video, those little pockets that hold the oil, they also will hold the air and make it a little bit more buoyant like we saw. All right, so let's see. We'll get some of these questions going here. Peel contains oxygen. Sorry, guys. Okay, so let's see. So water will actually, yeah, get into the peeled orange and help it sink a little bit, which might allow it to gain that density, some of the density there. Do we have any other questions about this one by chance?
I know that earlier, before you did this demonstration, there was the question, I think that got us on this topic, was if there are more experiments that you can do with citrus fruit or oranges. I know maybe you have heard of a lemon battery before, and that is where you have like the two leads, two different metals that you can put. I'm blanking, it's zinc, and I'm blanking on the other one right now. Do you remember what the other material is, Julie?
So with lemon batteries, I've actually used pennies.
Oh,
so
yeah,
pennies on both
work.
sides with some connectors in between will actually be able to bring some electricity, which is pretty cool. So that's a really fun one to try also. A lemon battery is definitely one that could be used with citrus fruit. So we have a question, is that the same if you did an orange and not a cutie? Yes. So an orange would react in very much the same way. I just use cuties because it's what I have at home. And they fit in a glass a little better.
All right, Kira, how much citrus fruit experiments is there? So now that's actually an interesting question. I'm going to answer exactly how you asked it, because that is actually kind of a cool thing to bring us onto what's called the scientific method. Now, talking about experiments, we usually kind of use the term experiment kind of interchangeably with demo, but really anytime that you have an idea, you kind of think, okay, this is how something works, and that's your best guess as to what the result will be. Then you do an experiment to find out. Like if we were saying, okay, I think that when I take the peel and I squeeze it next to the orange, that it will put the fire out. Then you will do an experiment and you'll take that peel and you find out what the result is. And then you will find out, oh no, it actually makes sparks. So as far as there being experiments that you can try, there's technically an unlimited amount of experiments. You can always think, okay, well, what happens if I take an orange and I roll it, go down the hill faster than a lemon? Then you'll do an experiment and you'll find out what the result is. So really there are an infinite number of experiments with just about anything. You just want to kind of make a guess first. you test, and you find out what the result is. And if it's not what you thought it might be, you can always make a new hypothesis, make a new guess, and then find out what the result would be with a different experiment, or with the same experiment, maybe with different results. As far as how many citrus demos there is, there would be a limited amount to that, just because there's so many things that are interesting to, show other people. But as far as I know maybe, those 2 or 3, the flaming, limonene, the balloon pop limonene, the lemon battery, and then, or I guess 4, and then there's the floating and the sinking. I'm not sure personally how many more that I know, but I'm sure there's probably some more out there.
Yeah, the possibilities are endless, right? It's always just a matter of how many questions we can ask. So,
right.
Next question, why do lemon batteries work? So in terms of a lemon battery, it's, I believe, a reaction from the metal and the acid. There is an exchange and an oxidation going on in there, an exchange of electrons causing that energy to be exchanged. Again, with the exact specifics of it, I'm not positive right at this moment. But again, we're more than happy to pass that or to look that up and to help answer that on some of our future episodes of Fleet TV.
All right, Alex, let's say you stockpiled oranges and squeezed the limonene out of them. Could it drive a diesel car? Now, that is a question that is much larger because, of course, an engine is really highly tuned to the specific kind of fuel that it's going to be using, and like diesel is going to work a lot differently than limonene will. It will usually have a different stoichiometry, like we were talking about earlier, the amount of oxygen and fuel that are going to be put together. And also the question is, how much is that limonene going to expand when it explodes, and is that going to be enough to push the pistons of an engine? You saw that it did spark quite a bit, but it wasn't like a huge fireball. And you really need to have a really big expansion of these gases to push those cylinders around in the engine. So I would say I'm not really sure if that would work in an engine, whether it's diesel or anything else.
All right, next question. Can you do it with other fruit?
I would think probably not, at least as far as I know. I don't know any other fruits that have limonene in it. It's pretty, widely known that citrus fruit has limonene in them. But as far as I know, other fruits don't. It's totally possible that they might, or at least there might be a few different other kind of fruits that aren't citrus that may be out there. But as far as I know, I don't really know of any.
Awesome.
Yes, and so
do all citrus fruits have
limonene? Yes, they do. That is across all the citrus fruit, whether it's a lime or it's a grapefruit or it's an orange or any of those things. You'll notice that all of those fruits are pretty similar, and they have those little bumps. All those bumps are where that limonene is. Oranges are especially known for that because they're kind of like the poster boy fruit for that orange smell, and they are especially bumpy. You'll notice that like a lime or a lemon is a little bit smoother, and then a grapefruit may be kind of similar to an orange, but just not quite as bumpy. But all of them do have kind of that, that orange peel texture on them, and that is where that limonene is held. All right. What is your favorite
next question? What's your favorite? Yeah.
My favorite is this one because I don't know. I really like the big flashy experiments. I like things that are a little bit dangerous. I used to host one of the Don't Try This at Home shows at the Science Center, and that was just the funnest thing ever. And so that's actually where I've kind of learned some of the skills here to be safe with these materials and these kind of experiments. But I just love doing it. All right, and then Charity, how do you spell limonene? So it would be Limonene. So like limo, like a limousine, would be the first 4, and then 9, N-I-N-E, limonene.
Are all gases flammable is our next question from.
All right, so not all gases are flammable. You have a lot of different kind of gases, and some are called what's inert. So an inert gas is something that's not going to be flammable. But it doesn't necessarily mean that, that all gases around you that aren't currently on fire aren't flammable. Like what's kind of interesting is that oxygen in our atmosphere is flammable. And you may think, well, we breathe it. It's in the air around us. Why isn't it that when you light a candle, the entire world explodes if there's oxygen in there? Well, the thing is that oxygen only really makes up about 20% of our atmosphere. Much less than people would expect. They would think, oh, if we're supposed to breathe oxygen, then why isn't it 100%? And that's the reason. If it was 100%, then you would probably have all kinds of fires that would never be put out. You would have a bunch of plants that would die because they create oxygen. They don't breathe it. You would also, it would cause a lot of internal problems too. So yeah, not all gases are flammable. Some are inert, some are flammable. And there's all kinds of different gases out there that are going to react different ways with different things. All right, Charity. Yes, that is the correct spelling of limonene, Limonine. Yes, correct. All right. Should you do it at home? I would suggest not doing it at home because I can't guarantee the amount of limonene that is going to be in your orange peel. You might get one that just has so much and you might squeeze it and it might cause a larger reaction than you are expecting. And I would really, really hate to suggest that people try this at home and then they catch their whole house on fire and then their whole life is ruined because of a tiny little science experiment. So yeah, please don't try this at home. Anything with fire can be dangerous. So let that, be left to the professionals. Let's see, could 5 orange peels of limonene create fire? I guess, yeah, I mean, like that's where the danger is. So let's say you had 5 people and they had 5 candles, they were all really close together and, you all squeezed them at the same time. It would make sense that that fire may be a little bit bigger. And because there's more of like a fuel source. I personally haven't done it myself, but actually sounds like something that might be interesting for us to try later and maybe create a little video about. But that would be just like the experiment that we were talking about earlier. You have this guess: could 5 orange peels of limonene create fire? So you would kind of pose your question. You would have your guess, and your guess might be yes or it might be no. So you have your guess, then you do your test. So we would be able to do that test for you. Maybe at some point in the future, maybe we'll release a video about that. But that would be the test. And then whatever the result is would tell you the answer to that question. Let's see, what other fruit adaptations keep them from being eaten? If you notice, a lot of fruits have this bitter peel to them. Like if you ever have just eaten apple peel, I don't know why you would do that. A lot of times people will peel the apples to get to the inside parts. Peels typically are there as a self-defense mechanism. So all kinds of different fruits have different types of things. I know that there are some fruits that have spikes all over them, like jackfruit and things like that. You'll have these physical safety mechanisms, but then some of them are more chemical, like the limonene. So yeah, just about everything in nature is trying to fight for its place and trying to fight to survive. So just about everything has these adaptations to make sure that they don't get overrun by all kinds of other things that might be fighting for that space in nature. So that's why candles go out when you put the lid on. Yes, so when you put put a lid on a candle, it burns up all the oxygen around that it needs to have fire. Fire needs 3 things. It needs a fuel source, it needs oxygen, and it needs heat. You can kind of think of it as a stool with 3 legs. If you take one of those legs off the stool's going to fall down. So if you put the lid on there, you're not allowing any new oxygen to come in. The flame of the candle will burn all that oxygen up, and then there won't be anything left. Yeah, that is a little weird, huh? Yeah, it is. All right. Thank you, Dan. And yes, it's ironic that peels are supposed to make them unappealing. Very good. But right. Correct. Carbon dioxide is not flammable. You can actually use carbon dioxide to put out fires. A lot of times you have fire extinguishers that have carbon dioxide in them. There are some demos that you may see either us do or some other sources of science content where they'll have a candle and they'll have usually like dry ice, just frozen carbon dioxide, and they'll pour that out onto the candle and you actually see it go out. All right, how does it react? I'm not sure. How does the limonene react? Is that what the question is? I'm guessing that it is. And that, let's see, how much oxygen do you need for a fire? I put the lid halfway on with the flame continue going. Yeah, so basically if you have this external oxygen source, when it burns up the oxygen inside, that is not going to be there anymore. It's going to create a vacuum. So if there's even a tiny little crack, it's going to suck air inside, and then part of that air is going to be that oxygen that it needs to burn. This is actually kind of a neat experiment that you may have seen before, maybe us or other science outlets out there. But if you sometimes you'll take a hard-boiled egg, which is kind of squishy and kind of slippery, and if you put that where it can sit on top of the neck of a bottle and not fall inside, if you were to have a flame inside of that bottle and then put the egg on top, then the oxygen inside would be burned up, creating a vacuum. And the air pressure outside will actually push that hard-boiled egg inside the bottle without you having to touch it. Let's see, do all fruits have cool experiments? That's a good question. I'm sure there's probably some other experiments. Have you done any more fruit experiments, Julie?
Yeah, so I've done a couple involving some different fruit. We've done some experiments in terms of like apples to see how quickly they brown, or the things that affect how quickly they'll brown, or to keep an apple from browning. We've used, talking about like lemon batteries, we've done something kind of similar with electricity with bananas. So there's all kinds of fruit experiments out there. Again, we're kind of only limited by the questions we can ask in our imagination. So yeah, there's definitely tons and tons of other fruit experiments out there.
Yeah, what's funny is actually, speaking of the apple browning, the same mechanism works with avocados, and that brings us back to citrus, where if you were to use lemon juice on the apples or on the avocado, it would actually prevent them from browning. It's kind of a cool little chemical reaction that prevents that. Yeah, you're welcome, Em Warburton. Thank you for thinking that. Yeah, isn't that, yeah, Candace, I love, vacuums are just so interesting. Air, like, you know, the absence of air and how that affects things, pressure, air pressure, and all those different things is really interesting. Oh yeah, Eric, I also love huge, dangerous experiments. I wish that I, you know, was on that TV show Mythbusters. They get to do so many cool things. That would have been, oh my gosh, a dream job. What are some experiments that take a long time?
What are some experiments that take a long time to keep us occupied? Wow. So, I mean, do you want to start, Jackie? You can.
Sure. I mean, like,
do you have
there are a lot of things that you can do. A lot of things that can go slowly are things you would have to do with plants. Like you could take beans. Maybe you did this in like elementary school, where you take like those dry hard beans and you put them in a paper towel that is soaked with water, and then you would put that in a Ziploc bag. You maybe can tape that to your window where there's a lot of sun, and then you'll find out what's going to happen. I don't want to give away the ending, but you'll see what happens slowly over time with that bean. Any other ideas, Julie, as these long, slow experiments that you kind of watch unfold?
Yeah, so the plant ones are great. The other ones that I'm thinking of immediately are ones involving reactions like with water. So sometimes the like growing crystals or something like that in water. So using Epsom salt, lots and lots and lots of Epsom salt, and some very hot water, you can actually grow some crystals. And that kind of just deals with the particles having to consolidate onto like a string or something like that. So that's another really fun one that takes a little bit of a while to grow, but you can actually see it starting to form. Because spring is coming, like caterpillars, cocoons, chrysalises growing butterflies, things like that are always really fun. Those are great to do with kids to learn about the life cycle, taking care of some animals. Those are really neat as well.
Yeah, and I'm working on creating some videos, some video content that will be projects that you can actually make at home, things that are safe enough and that you can make with the materials around you. One that will be coming up as soon as I can actually get some sun. It hasn't been very sunny in here in San Diego recently. It's been kind of rainy. But if you know what a solar still is, we'll be making a solar still out of 2 plastic bottles. If you don't know, it's actually a survival technique. If you're lost somewhere and you're out of water, you can actually purify dirty water by getting it to evaporate. and for it to condense, and then for it to land in another container. And that would just be taking 2 plastic bottles, taping them together in the middle, and then you can find out kind of how that works. Hopefully I'll get that video out to you guys soon. All right, McChesney, can you do it with vegetables? I think you're asking about the limonene reaction. I would probably not. You know, I'm all the citrus fruits are all just fruits. I don't know of any vegetables that have limonene in them. So I don't think that you'd be able to like crack some celery over a flame and have it catch. But you can always try it out. Now you can, if you were to be, actually, sorry, let's not do that. I was just about to give you an idea that you probably shouldn't try at home. So please don't do anything with fire at home. But you can try some other experiments out. If it's a safe kind of experiment that you're not using fire for, you can have a guess as to what's going to happen with it and try it out in a nice, safe way. And then you can kind of write down what your results are. And then if it doesn't work out the way that you wanted, you can always try different test, different kind of experiment, and find out what the results are there non-oxygen based flames? I believe that I've heard of some really weird kind of science that happens where they're able to get flames without oxygen, but I wouldn't really know how to explain that. That's a little bit outside of my understanding. That's kind of really high level science that's just kind of on the cutting edge. Guacamole puts out fires. You're sure? Okay, yeah. I mean, I'm sure you could probably have a small fire and take a big glob of guacamole, put it on there. It'll cover it all up. It wouldn't allow any oxygen to get to it. So that would make sense. Yeah, good cooks do know about lemons and apples to prevent browning in the kitchen. Yes. All right.
Yeah, there's so many experiments you can do with just the stuff in the kitchen, right? Chemistry in the kitchen is something that we do plenty of over at the Fleet as well. And so, yeah, it's science is everywhere, right? And we're constantly trying to get that message across to people that everything around you is pretty much involving science of some kind. So yeah, we definitely encourage you guys to try some of these more safe experiments at home with the stuff that's available to you right in your kitchen.
Yeah, something that is interesting that I think I'm going to try while we're all kind of stuck at home is you have recipes for different, baking items, usually like cookies or cakes or things like that. And what I'm going to try, something that I've seen before, is kind of doing experiments with the different ingredients of making cookies. So, you have baking soda, you have salt, you have sugar, you have flour, all these different things. And the recipe says you have to have a specific amount of each. But what happens if you add a little bit more salt, or maybe not enough flour, or a little bit too much butter, or things like that? Then I'm going to kind of try to see if I can pay attention to all the changes and see which one looks different, tastes different, which way it tastes different. Is it too salty? Is it too sweet? Maybe you find out what kind of changes happen when you adjust little parts of the plan.
So we have, do crystals change form or color while growing? I believe it might depend on the type of crystal. Changing form in terms of like their shape and things like that from the outside, you'll probably see, or like from our naked eye, you'll probably see a difference because they will be growing as it kind of just forms these structures on top of each other. If you were to look microscopically though at the individual like particles of it on a more closer level, like a microscopic level, I believe what you would see was just multiples of the same thing being kind of just accumulating and growing on top of itself. So for example, like as a salt crystal gets bigger and bigger, that's because there's more and more of the same stuff being added, not necessarily because it is changing its actual like chemical form. It's still salt in itself, it just might change shape because of what's being added on top. And then, color change in general, oh sorry, go ahead.
Also with the shape, there are some outside variables that if you were just to have a crystal growing in a completely static environment with no temperature change, without it being jostled around, then it would grow kind of along its regular path. But there are some of those external variables. So if it was to get jostled around, or maybe if it was suddenly really, really hot or really cold, that might change the path that this crystal might take. Maybe the crystal was going to grow this way, and then it got bumped, and now it's going to just grow slightly different now. Of course, it's going to grow the way that it was planning on growing, but it might have to kind of change its plan a little bit if it, if these outside things change. So I would say that it is possible, but yes, it does come down to the different types of crystals and their environments and circumstances.
So we have the question, what if you opened the crystal?
Now, I know that in
I'm
gemology,
not sure of the detail to that question.
In gemology and crystals and things like that, there is a term called cleavage, which is where when you break the crystal, its tendency to actually recreate that same shape over again. Like with salt crystals, like we were talking about, salt crystals are a cube. And so when you have like a big chunk of salt and you break it, those parts are still going to be cube shaped. They're going to still break into these smaller and smaller cubes as they go. The same thing, I believe, with quartz. The shape that quartz wants to be is going to kind of stay the same just about, anywhere along the line as it gets broken. And there's a lot of different parts to how a crystal works, from hardness, and, all those different kind of the different parts of what makes up a crystal. So yeah, I would say if you broke open a crystal, you would see kind of how it breaks, and where it wants to break along, and maybe how it kind of repeats its pattern all the way down.
Next question, do you have any science websites besides this that can help you learn more?
That's a good question. Julie, do you have any resources for us?
Yeah, so there are lots and lots of great science websites out there. In terms of some fun experiments and science content, Bozeman Science is a great resource. We were fortunate enough to have him kind of do some professional development with us at the Fleet a little while back. There's great demos, great information there on science. Other than that, depending on what type of content you're looking for too, there are so many different resources. Clearly the internet is just the easiest and widest range of sources right now. But if there is a specific type, we could be happy to point you in some directions of what you might be looking for, just to help narrow it down a little bit. Also, I'm seeing that the bottom's resources, especially for 4 to 5 year olds. So for elementary school right now, again, plenty of resources out there. I can help point you in some directions for that after this if you would like. Or we can hopefully get some information to be able to share more of those resources with you, specifically for students or for families with their kids at home right now, because I know that we're definitely all trying to stay engaged together in the household. So yeah, we can definitely help share some of those more specific websites with you guys.
All right, are salt crystals actually good chew toys for guinea pigs? I have 2 of them. All right, Eric, now I don't know personally about the digestive system of the guinea pig. So I can't really say. I don't own any guinea pigs. I don't know anybody that has a guinea pig, except for you now. I know that you have guinea pigs. So I don't want to say that you should have that be a chew toy just in case that is harmful to a guinea pig. I don't really know. So I would say talk to a guinea pig professional. They would be able to tell you if that is a good or a bad idea for your guinea pigs. All right, can you look at Wikipedia? I would say you probably want to find some other sources other than Wikipedia, because Wikipedia, the wiki part, means that it is populated by other people. Now, a lot of times they'll have good resources, and their sources will actually be from scientific journals and things like that, but there is always the chance that there might be some random person out there that may type in, oh, gravity doesn't exist, or maybe oranges and apples are exactly the same thing, or things like that. You never really know that everything you're getting from Wikipedia is absolutely factual. So I would say try to find some other resources other than Wikipedia, or at least look at the sources that they use in those articles and go to them directly. And kind of use your best judgment to find out, is this a good source? Is this a respected university or a science center or things like that is actually giving me this information, rather than, you know, some guy on his blog that's just making up facts that aren't actually real. All right, Kira, you're asking, could you say the same to every crystal? I think you're talking about how they break. Not every crystal is going to have the same properties as any other crystal. Every single one is going to be slightly different than the other, and that's how they look different, and they have different colors, and they act different ways, and they grow in different patterns and things like that. So I don't really think that you could always say the same thing for every crystal. Everything's going to be slightly different, but there are a lot of families of crystals and things like that that may share properties. But I don't believe there's any crystals that are exactly the same without just being the same crystal. All right, Dan.
So Dan shared,
You
the
got that,
YouTube. So there's a
link?
YouTube video. Yeah. It says apparently chlorine and fluorine can also act as oxidizers in terms of the non-oxygen flames. And then next says, definitely do not try at home. So
Absolutely.
there are such things as non-oxygen flames, just be very, very dangerous.
Yeah, I knew there were. I just didn't know off the top of my head what they were. All right, please provide elementary science experiments at home per different grade level if possible. And this is actually the very, very, very first experience of that we're having. You know, we're all kind of doing this as we go, trying to figure out the best way to do these kind of things, especially with stuff that we have around us. It's a little bit harder to get materials now. I mean, it's also not necessarily difficult, but it's also probably best for us to try to keep ourselves healthy and safe as well, trying to use our best judgment in these times. So we're also trying to provide some experiments that make sense with the people that are going to see them, things that at home that they can kind of wonder about. But we're also trying to make as much science get out there for people as possible. All right, is vinegar flammable? I'm not sure. I'll have to do an experiment and find out. I haven't heard of it being flammable, but I can't really say for sure because I haven't done that experiment yet. Please don't try to find out at home, just in case it is flammable. You want to not, kind of do that experiment and find out in the worst way that it is. I don't think that it is, but I'd have to do some more experimentation myself and find out. Because the question is, some things catch fire when they're just a liquid on a surface. Sometimes they catch fire when they're a puff of mist in the air. So you'd have to if you were going to try to find out the answer to that question, you'd have to try it a bunch of different ways. And then once you exhaust all the different possibilities, that's when you could finally say whether it is or it isn't. All right.
Right. So there is a thing where, in terms of the vinegar being flammable, I do know that you can put it in pots and in your microwave, and then when you heat it up to a very high heat, the vapors of the evaporating chemicals will actually help clean things. So in general, at least in that lower sense of heat that we would put it at, I don't believe it is. But like you said, it acts differently, different temperatures and different states. And so while, heating it up and boiling it, it isn't, or it doesn't appear to be, under the right conditions, it might be. So yeah, it is a good question though, and something that we could explore.
Mm-hmm. And like you probably have seen, in movies, the kind of mad scientist lab with a bunch of chemicals over here and a bunch of stuff like that. So even if vinegar on its own wasn't flammable, I know that when there are different kind of chemical reactions, you could possibly change the makeup of the vinegar, turn it into something else, and then that other thing may be flammable. Those are some other kind of experiments that I've done before, where you take a material that isn't one thing and you turn it into that, and then you work with that chemical and can react in different ways. All right, growth. Crystals, rocks change over time. Yes, that's true. So I know that there are a lot of different kind of rocks. Igneous rocks from volcanoes, sedimentary rocks, different kind of rocks like that. Like in granite is actually what's called a conglomerate, which is a whole bunch of little rocks and stuff like that all squished together. And there's some crystals in there, and there's some other just like non-crystalline parts. There could even be just really squished together dirt that has become a rock over time. And that's why if you ever have any granite countertops, or even if you just have a glob of granite, you'll see that it's all speckled with all these different kind of things. Some of them are kind of shiny and shimmery, some aren't, some are black, some are white, some are kind of all different sort of colors. And that's because they're actually just a bunch of different rocks and parts that are all squished together over time until they make one material out of a bunch of parts. Yes, McChesney, I love to do experiments. It is one of my very, very favorite things.
Me too.
I like to know how things work. And the best way to find out how things work is to experiment and to find out the answers to your questions directly. And just the coolest thing is waiting to find out what's going to happen and guessing. And sometimes it's a little bit disappointing to not have the right answer, but if you keep going, eventually you get to the right answer and you have guessed correctly and you're confirmed as to what your guess was, and that is just the best feeling ever. All right, why does vinegar smell so horrible?
Oh, sorry, one last thing. We're gonna wrap it up soon.
Okay.
So we're gonna have our last question of the hour. Unfortunately, we could talk about these things all day. I'm learning so much already. So.
Yeah. All right, so actually we have some questions, a little bit of working together in the questions here. So Eric asked, why does vinegar smell so horrible? Dan has given us an awesome resource from the internet talking about acetic acid solution. And yes, so acetic acid is a colorless liquid, and it basically is the smell that is in vinegar. And see, like that, like right there. So it's 5% acetic acid solution. That's what it says. And it says that that is flammable, and at temperatures warmer than 39 degrees, explosive vapor air mixtures may be formed. But remember, it is only 5% of that vinegar that's going to affect how it kind of works. Just like I was talking about earlier with the oxygen in our atmosphere only being 20%. It's not going to work the same way that it would if it was 100%. So that acetic acid is not going to necessarily work the way that it would if it was at 100%. All right, do you do many kitchen experiments? If so, can you give an example? Well, like I was talking about earlier with the cookies, if you make cookies and you have one, like a small batch that is made up one way and another batch that's made up slightly differently, those are ways you can experiment and find out what your results are. Oh, I think that if I put less baking soda, I think my cookie's gonna end up flatter and wider rather than thinner and taller, or whatever you think your guesses might be. So there are a lot of different experiments. Most of the experiments that I think I'm going to try to figure out how to do will probably take place in the kitchen, just because it's a place that is a little bit safer. It's made for doing things in and kind of splashing things around. I'm probably not going to do many things on my couch or, you know, in front of the TV, because that's not as secure of a place to do experiments. So a lot of the experiments hopefully will be taking place in the kitchen, maybe on the balcony outside, or maybe on the ground. There's a lot of different kind of neat little platforms, mini laboratories that are available around you all the time. All right, getting a lot of thanks. You are so welcome. Thank you, explorers, for coming out. Thank you so much for being explorers in the first place. I'm so happy to bring science to you guys.
Yes, thank you so much, guys, for joining us today. We hope you had fun.
Yeah, and can you guys just share a little bit more about the Fleet Center, what you guys are doing before we sign off?
Yeah, so we are right now trying to create as much of a library of videos and information for you guys to consume at home as possible. I know that it's hard to be able to kind of keep your time filled with education and information at home. And it's also just kind of brings your energy level down, kind of sitting in the same place all the time. So we're trying to find ways to bring that information to you guys with our new Fleet TV, which is FLEETV. So Fleet TV, you'll see that on our website, rhfleet.org/FleetTV. You can also look at anything we have on our social media channels at Fleet Science. Facebook, Instagram, any of those things, we'll be trying to post as much on there as possible. And then anytime that you do any sort of experiments or interact with our stuff, don't forget to hashtag at Fleet2Go, FLEET, the number 2, the word go. Use that on all our platforms too, so we can kind of interact. And remember, if you had any questions that didn't get answered today, you can also use the hashtag Fleet, or Ask a Fleetster, Ask a Fleetster, Fleetster.
Awesome.
Right, so to just continue on that for one more second, Fleet TV is actually broken up into several different sections. So Ask a Fleetster is one where we focus on answering questions either from students or from the general public, and those are generally going to be answered by a scientist and one of our many panelists of scientists that we've got. And we also have Fleet to Go, which is kind of what we did today with an experiment that we bring to you guys. So yeah, keep an eye out for it. Thank you. And one more time, the URL, fleetscience.org/FleetTV with 2 T's in there, FLEET TV.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much, Julie and Jackie. You guys I feel like I just learned so much from you guys and all the awesome questions that the explorers had asked today. So also thank you to you explorers for asking all those questions and showing up today. Make sure to be on the lookout for future virtual Explorer experiences, because this will not be our last one. We will have many more to come. And if you want more Balboa Park information and content, including live chat, videos from all across this park, make sure you visit the culturalpartnership.org/updates. Again, that's culturalpartnership.org/updates. And afterwards, we also have a survey ready for you guys, because we just want to make sure that this is the best experience that we can provide for you guys in this time. So if you guys could take a few moments just to fill that out, that would be awesome. And we just hope you guys loved our first virtual experience. So we hope to have you guys for the next one. Bye, guys.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Thanks for coming.
Bye.